wrote Infinite Sequels 3 years ago. I brought it out in November of 2013. And I started planning launch events. So I started constructing readings. And I decided my readings had to start and end with the same poem, almost, because that's the way I constructed the book. And from there, I began adding poems and saying, well, I really need this poem, and I need a grouping of love poems, and I need a grouping of poems around forgiveness and retribution. And by the time I was finished, I had 25 poems neatly structured and neatly grouped. And I thought, you know what, this isn't a reading, this is a one-man show. So I built a simple set for it, and I adapted a musical score. So a number of the poems have music under. The book starts and ends with the same poem, almost, which is a very yearning, beseeching prayer from the poet. This character called the poet, who is the guy that wrote the book, that happens to be me. The poet performs 25 or 26 poems. I've added 3 new poems from my new book of poetry, Such a Frail Book of Endings, which is about to come out. So I'm constantly changing the show a little bit, tweaking it. Audiences can expect to be emotionally engaged with the poet. They can expect to wipe away a few tears. They can also expect to laugh, and hopefully in the right spots, and hopefully have some real fun with the show. Obviously, I'd like it at the end of the show for them to feel as though they've experienced something unique, something very different in theater, and something hopefully compelling and unforgettable. I think what attracts me to poetry is the simple fact that I love the compression of thought and language, and the fact that one can be so compelling and so poignant in such a short period of time. So I think that's why I've always liked poetry and always been attracted to it. I've written a novel, I've written 2 plays, but I always come back to poetry. I always think of things that deserve a poetic treatment, and that's what I do. For me, the litmus test of a really strong, well-written poem is whether it reads well out loud. And I'm looking for emphasis and cadence and lilt and intonation and expression of thought. And is it conveying the feeling and the emotion that I wanted to convey through that poem? So that becomes a real test for me. And everything I write, I was finding that I was reading it out loud and performing it. And that's where this whole thing about performance art, as I say, I think poetry is not only written art, it's also performance art and spoken word art. And the two fit together like a hand in a glove. Well, certainly as a poet and I think a spoken word artist, some of my key influencers certainly would be Dylan Thomas, for example, who was a fabulous poet, but also a wonderful orator. And that's what people loved about him, was not so much his poetry as the performance. I think also an American poet by the name of Rod McEwen. And Rod McEwen, some may know, is one of America's largest selling poets, about 20 books of poetry, but he was also a master at spoken word art and performing with a full orchestra under. And finally, I'd say probably Leonard Cohen. He's a great reader of his own poetry, and in his concerts he does indeed perform a number of poems, usually with the soundtrack under. And I think those 3 guys in particular have been wonderful influences in terms of my spoken word art. And the larger field, certainly Sylvia Plath, Emily Dickinson, etc., etc. I could go on for a long time about influences of poetry. The show Infinite Sequels will be Wednesday, May the 13th at 6 o'clock at Falstaff Family Center, and again on Thursday, May 14th at 8 o'clock. Hope to see you there. You can really look forward to a great show, an unforgettable, some have said mesmerizing, spellbinding hour with the poet. Go out, Buy your tickets now, please. Support SpringWorks. We all need your help. We're all struggling artists out here. But you can look forward to a great show, and I promise to deliver the very best I can. Thanks.